go ahead and get started. And I want to introduce myself. And my name is Lakaija Lang, and I am the president of the NAMIC-Virginia chapter. I want to start off by thanking our amazing friends at the SCTE and NCTA for co-sponsoring this event with us as a part of our three-part tech series for 2021. We welcome you all to today's discussion and happy to see that we have a lot of folks from around the world dialing in to this very important discussion. Did you know that many of the largest tech companies are setting goals of becoming carbon neutral by 2030 and beyond? Lack of access to clean, affordable energy solutions have created economic and health disparities, particularly in low-income communities. Today, you will hear from a panel of industry leaders in this space that will educate, share, and recommend things we can do in our businesses and as consumers to help achieve these goals to become carbon neutral by 2030. I now introduce you to Ira Pearl, who is Vice President of Environmental Sustainability at Cox Enterprises and is the leader of our Cox Conserves initiatives, for words on this important topic. In his role, he leads Cox Enterprises' efforts to tackle sustainability challenges while driving its goals to achieve zero waste to landfill by 2024 and becoming water and carbon neutral by 2034. Ira has spent more than 25 years of his experience in his career developing and executing sustainable strategies in the areas of renewable energy, climate change, and environmental remediation. Prior to joining Cox, Ira served in executive roles at Montauk Energy, AGL Resources, and Delta Airlines. He has served on numerous boards during his career, including the Georgia Conservancy, South-Based Energy Institute, Atlanta Botanical Garden, and the Georgia Air and Waste Management Association. He's been busy. He holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology and has completed postgraduate work in nuclear engineering as a U.S. Navy submarine officer. Ira, I turn it over to you.
Wow, I hope I can live up to that introduction. Thanks so much. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am flattered to have the opportunity to tee up this session on green energy and technology. And first, let me congratulate the Virginia chapter of NAMIC for staging this event, with special thanks to SCTE, CableLabs, and NCTA, the Internet and Television Association, for partnering on this session. The industry that we represent, cable and telecommunications, has made major strides in the past decade in improving the energy efficiency of the cable plant, our home networks, and the devices that support them. But I know that you haven't done that alone. It has taken the collaboration of the energy industry, the consumer electronics industry, and other allies to get us where we are today. We'll hear more about that from our panel, as well as our prospects for future improvement. As the champion of energy efficiency at Cox, I am delighted to see NAMIC-Virginia putting much needed focus on this important topic. I'm here to tell you that the shift to clean energy is so important to our cable company, Cox Communications, just as it is to all of the companies under the Cox Enterprises umbrella. We're proud of the work that we've done to reduce our energy consumption and to green up our energy portfolio, both of which have provided fairly substantial cost savings to the company. I hope that today's sessions will encourage you to reflect on the choices that all of us make, individually and on behalf of our employers, from recycling to modes of transportation to the use of energy efficient devices. There's a role that each of us can play to help create a cleaner and more sustainable planet. Our companies are vital to that work as we touch millions of people here in the US and billions of others around the world. An energy efficiency improvement in a single device or in the way our infrastructure operates has a multiplier effect that really makes a difference. Taken together, these improvements can lead to substantive change. Let me take a moment now to share with you how Cox Enterprises looks at this challenge and what we are doing to help foster a greener future. Please join me in watching this short video narrated by our President and CEO, Alex Taylor.
When we think about the world today, it's hard not to worry about the environment. We live in a world of scarce resources. The population is expected to reach 9.8 billion people by 2050, up from 7 billion right now. How are we going to sustain so many people? How do we provide food, clean water, energy to all these people all over the world? How do we build a future without completely polluting or destroying our planet? I think a lot about these questions. My family and this company have always been firm believers and supporters of leaving the world in a better place. That's why my uncle Jim Kennedy created Cox Conserves 10 years ago. He saw how Cox could be a force to make a positive impact on our environment. We began by reducing waste and saving energy in our business operations, and every day we work towards our goals of sending zero waste to landfill by 2024 and becoming carbon and water neutral by 2044. Now, we may be able to build on our commitment to sustainability and build good businesses along the way. It's an initiative called Clean Technology, or Clean Tech. It means thinking differently about how we consume and how we manage our natural resources. New technology today is providing us new ways to think about these things. We're only at the beginning of this journey, but we have a new team in place, and they're out there every day, researching and analyzing the challenges and the opportunities in energy and food production and water conservation. Clean tech is about taking the problems facing the world and transforming them into opportunity. You can run a business that gives employees a better life, makes a return on investment, and has a positive impact on the environment and on society. That's the vision we have for Clean Tech, to challenge ourselves to think big, to find new business opportunities, and to build a better world for the next generation. Now is the time to be a leader in this space. We have a chance to make a real difference here for this company. I think we also have a chance to make a difference in the world around us, and that is just exciting. Our efforts to build a clean tech vertical are engineered towards the next generation and the generation after that. The way that Cox has grown its businesses is to always think and innovate about what's ahead. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little glimpse into how we are approaching some of our clean energy challenges. And while the video was specific to what my company is doing, perhaps it'll stimulate your own thinking about how you and your company can further this effort and help us improve our environment and make our planet more healthy and safe. So over the next hour, our panel of experts will help us gain a deeper understanding of industry efforts that are underway and how we can all work more closely together on these objectives. To lead that discussion, I'm proud to hand it off to my Cox colleague, Jeff Merritt, our Market Vice President for Roanoke, Virginia at Cox Communications. Jeff, good luck with your discussion today.
Hey, Ira, thank you so much for setting the stage for what's going to be a great panel discussion on green energy and technology. I'm honored to be here as your moderator today. And without further ado, let me just go ahead and introduce today's panel. First up is Derek DiGiacomo. He's the Senior Director of Energy Management Programs and Business Continuity at SCTE. Derek has more than 20 years with SCTE, and one of his most notable projects is Energy 2020. This is an industry-wide effort that will shape what the future of energy looks like for the cable industry. Derek is also the project manager for the Energy Management Subcommittee that is responsible for writing best practices and standards pertaining to energy reduction. So we'll likely hear a lot more about that during today's discussion, Derek. Next is Carla Walker Miller, the founder and CEO of Walker Miller Energy Services, one of the largest African-American and women-owned energy waste reduction companies in America. At Walker Miller, they help electric and gas utilities achieve mandated energy reduction goals that reduce waste, create local jobs, decrease the energy burdens on families, and reduce harmful greenhouse gases. Carla, welcome. We also have Doug Johnson. Doug is the Vice President of Technology Policy at the Consumer Technology Association. The CTA is North America's largest technology trade association, and its members are the world's leading innovators. These folks own and produce the Consumer Electronics Show, which is the most influential tech event in the world. In Doug's role, he serves as an advocate for the industry before regulators and legislators at the local, national, and international level for all kinds of policy matters concerning technology. And last but not least, we have Sam Khola. Sam is the Director of Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability at Liberty Global. In Sam's role, he is responsible for defining, implementing, evaluating, and advocating strategies, programs, and communications focused on driving environmental and social actions across Liberty Global. So welcome, Sam, Doug, Carla, and Derek. Thank you all so much for joining us today. So let's jump right in. We'll start off with a few questions for the entire panel, and then we'll shift to some individual questions based on each of your respective areas of expertise. For those who are in our audience, please use the chat function to ask any questions that you have throughout the program. And if we have time at the end, we'll throw a few of those questions out to our panel as well. So the first question is for the entire panel, and we can start with you, Derek. Please take just a moment to share with us what your organization is doing to advance green energy and what role you play in those efforts.
Thanks, Doug. Few things. SCTE is the American National Standards body for the cable broadband industry. And as you mentioned in my bio, we've been organized around what we've called the Energy 2020 program. And through Energy 2020, we bring together the thought leaders that have a concern for energy from both an operator and a vendor/supplier standpoint to help build the best and brightest standards and best practices, operational practices to help advance the energy reduction strategy for cable operators. We've done that since 2014. We've turned the corner in 2020. We've held over 25 meetings and continue to implement those best practices and standards that the folks like those at Cox and Liberty and our fellow operators have participated in the past. So that's largely what's been taking up the bulk of my time here over the last 7 years or so. So back to you, Jeff.
All right, thank you. Carla, how about you?
Hi, thanks for inviting me. I'm the founder and CEO of a company that I started 21 years ago in the large power equipment industry, but we pivoted to energy efficiency. And every year we go into more than 20,000 homes in the Midwest and help families save energy and save money by installing energy saving devices. It's really important to us to recruit a diverse team so that we are really reaching participants in energy efficiency programs who look like this country, who look like our communities. So we are very, very focused on driving energy efficiency, making it real and relevant to everyone and helping people understand our place and the importance and the urgency of us addressing energy issues. Every single person has a play in this.
Excellent. Thank you, Carla. Doug, let's go to you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks to NAMIC for having me join the panel discussion today. It's a great topic, as others have said. The perspective we bring is one from the downstream side, the product side, by and large, the consumer angle on environmental sustainability and specifically energy efficiency. We take a pretty comprehensive approach to environmental sustainability with our members and for our industry, and that includes materials use, chemicals use, product packaging, and the product use phase, of course, is where the energy efficiency angle comes in. But repair, disposal, and recycling at end of life are also very big issues for us in the environmental sector. We also produce reports that track the broader industry. So while we do a lot of work that focuses on products and product categories, we're also paying attention to what we're doing corporately with our members and at the industry level, and we track greenhouse gas emissions every couple of years on behalf of our industry. We also take a look at the trade show, Jeff, that you mentioned during the introduction, CES trade show. A lot of you may be familiar with that and have attended. Huge operation. Obviously, it has its own impact. And so over the past several years, our operations folks have worked with partners on the ground to reduce the environmental impact of that huge industry event. And then lastly, the role that I play at CTA when it comes to these issues is really being on point for our energy efficiency activities that certainly involve a lot of public policy, but also industry standards and market research and analysis that come into play. And I'll talk about those later. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And last but certainly not least, Sam, how about you, sir?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and thanks, panelists, but also the audience for actually showing interest to this topic. It sits really close to myself personally as well, and I think from our sense, it's really almost a no-brainer to focus on green energy, as we are based mainly in Europe, and Europe has a huge drive in really going down that route. But as Doug also mentioned, we have a number of areas that is really important to us as a business, whether it's waste, whether it's specifically emissions, and the emissions obviously from energy is one of the biggest pieces that we tackle, and of course emissions from our refrigerants, not to forget those. And obviously what we also see being an important aspect of that is that beyond the fact that we are looking at energy efficiency and green energy, we also want to make sure that when we tackle that, it is with the aim of also becoming more efficient. So in a sense, the stakeholders, obviously one of the most important being our employees, also see that as one of the key aspects of how to manage and how to drive this forward, both from a new technologies perspective, of course, but also from a best practices program. And I think we'll come back to that certainly with the help of Derek later on, also through the Energy 2020 program. So there are a number of these areas that we see as being extremely important for us as a business, but also actually as an industry as a whole. And then obviously the last part of the questions, what do we do to, personally, but also as a department, as corporate responsibility and sustainability to make this happen, is that we, first of all, we guide, we also help the different departments and different operations across the countries to implement the guidance in becoming more green, but also becoming more efficient. But also at the same time, we're trying to advocate throughout the business, but also beyond. So we're looking at making sure that our consumers are aware of the topic, making sure that they understand using our services generally is always great. Our services, cut a huge amount of emissions and, making you very efficient as a whole. But at the same time, taking our responsibility by making sure the information is out there, that our consumers, but also our business to business customers also know how to, deal with the green energy, but also efficiency topic as a whole. And back to you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. And Sam, we'll stick with you for this next one. We'll go in reverse order a little bit. And just to kind of tee this up, obviously, a lot of folks are working on this from a lot of different angles, and a lot of great, smart people invested in it, but it's not easy. So when you look at the cable and telecommunications industry, what do you see as the greatest challenges that we face in saving energy and becoming more energy efficient? We'll stick with you, Sam.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. I think that's a really great question. Obviously, there are a number of challenges we have, but actually, before even going to the challenge, I think what is interesting, we have a great opportunity. I think we are one of the industries that has been a huge innovator in the space we are in. I just give a very simple, basic story. 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I'm in the business for 18 years. I was asked to lead a project called DOCSIS 3.0. And I thought, oh, that's great. Yeah, I've been, doing a lot of acquisitions and integrations of new businesses, family of businesses joining our, family of Liberty. So that's an interesting one. Let me do that. And what was interesting at that time, I think a lot of, businesses out there kind of wrote us off. That's it. Cable is reached kind of end of its life. And obviously we proved everyone wrong, because cable is extremely strong and we've been able to innovate even more in the last 10 years. So our asset and opportunity is there. So it's a lot more opportunities than challenges. Obviously, the biggest opportunity that we have is actually our employees. Our employees across the board are really the people who make all of this happen. And I have to say, I'm extremely proud to be part of this industry, but also part of Liberty family, because we innovate and we make all these challenges actually into opportunities. But to tackle your question specifically, I think that the biggest challenge we have is obviously more innovation even, but even a bigger one, we are a distributed architecture business. And therefore, the current technologies that is out there, trying to match that with the distributed network is a slight challenge. But even that we see is slowly getting to a point where we're actually able to tackle that as well. And I think with the next few years, we will be able to see all of that totally in the past. The challenges are going to be in the past, and we'll be innovating even more in that space. Back to you, Jeff.
I love how you look at our employees for all of our respective companies as a opportunity. I think that's a great point that you make there. And thank you, Sam. Doug, we'll go to you. We still have you, Doug? Might be on mute.
There we go.
All right.
Lost the button. Well, thanks, Jeff, and apologies for that delay there. So, as we look at challenges in our sector with respect to these issues, like I said earlier, we're taking a downstream perspective from the consumer angle here on the products. But our products, as all of you know, because you use them, help keep people, entertained, informed, and connected. And therefore, they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And on one hand, that makes us all familiar with the technology. On the other hand, it also, from an industry perspective, that is standing up for environmental sustainability, it makes us an attractive target, in a sense, because those who track and research and try to shape policy when it comes to the environment and energy efficiency are looking for what seems to be big targets. And although our products are everywhere, they actually aren't taking a proportional share of the energy pie, if you will. It's only about 12% of residential electricity use, but it seems to be a lot more because they're everywhere. And so the ubiquity brings scrutiny, and we become an attractive target for research and policy action. That's okay, because we've met that challenge with our own research and our own policy action and our own initiatives, which I'll talk about a bit later. I think in general, our industry has a good story to tell when it comes to these issues. These products that we all have also enable us to behave and work in ways that can reduce emissions, reduce our environmental impact, say through teleworking is a great example. We've been doing a lot of that this past year and a half. Online shopping and delivery instead of going out and doing multiple errands and that sort of thing. You also have with our products and the networks behind them, the opportunity to manage and track your energy use in the home or in buildings. And that itself can be a tremendous enabler of energy savings and carbon emissions reduction.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, you are exactly right. This last year and a half has certainly proved to us the value of that technology, and of course the ramifications of that on the environment, and driving, and all the other things you mentioned. Thank you so much, Carla. We'll come to you next.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because it absolutely is. This is a ubiquitous technology, absolutely. But one of the things about the technology is that the costs are also hidden. And one of the biggest challenges for me is the collective will to make people, families and businesses aware of the true cost of some of the technologies. 12% sounds like a really small number, but when you look at the cost, 12% of the home economies particularly of marginalized and underrepresented and low to moderate income families, that's a big hit. I first became interested in this subject years ago, and am actually stunned about the lack of the connection between energy use, not just cable technology, but all technology, energy use and behavior. Because you get an energy bill a month after you actually use the energy, there has never been an effective mechanism to tie use and behavior to cost. So for me, one of the things that's lacking is really the collective will to make these issues real and relevant, drive the awareness, and also drive the ability for families and businesses to control the cost of the energy that they actually use. So one of the things that's most important to me right now is to drive that transparency, which is enabled by technology. For the first time, we can actually see what every discrete load in our house costs us per hour and per month. And it is incumbent upon us, because we know, to be able to drive that information that data, that technology that we're all paying for, to the people who can use it to change the way they live, to make more effective value of every single dollar they spend, including cable and technology.
Excellent point. Yeah, that knowledge and data are clearly going to be a path forward. Thank you, Carla. And Derek, why don't you bring us home on this one?
Great, thank you. When we stood up the Energy 2020 program, we really did it for a couple of reasons. And one that comes to mind was the encouraging and rallying the industry to say, hey, let's make energy, and in particular, green energy. You see the picture behind me. SCTE is one of the first in the industry to put solar panels to carry critical load and do proof of concept around incorporating renewables into backup powering for critical systems. So one reason for Energy 2020 and rallying the industry was say, okay, let's look at this and address the challenge of greening the power infrastructure, because we're really, looking at what we do. We've left the entertainment age, and we are providing critical services to all the consumers that do business with the likes of Cox and Liberty and all the others. So that was part one. And then part two was we had some foresight in seeing, where the industry was headed beyond the traditional triple play, and say, let's make sure that power is never an obstacle of business growth and service expansion. So Energy 2020 and the teams that really got motivated and are still, rallying behind the call are looking to, again, expand and incorporate renewable power in the best practices and standards that help shape and define who we are and the services that we bring.
Outstanding. Thank you. All right, let's shift gears a little bit here. We're at an event sponsored by NAMIC, and we're looking at green energy. There's clearly an intersection here, and with NAMIC as our industry's principal advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, it comprises many people of color throughout our businesses. And so why should green energy be important to communities of color? And what impact is this work having on the health and safety of our communities? Carla, would you like to start us off this time?
Of course. And obviously, it should be important to communities of color. Again, energy, if a family or a business, if a family adds the cost of electricity, water, and gas, and forget transportation fuels, for many families in this country, that is the largest economic cost of running a household, literally the cost of energy. In cities like Detroit, where property values are still depressed compared to the rest of the country, energy might be your number one cost of operating a home. And it's important because we don't look at it holistically. And that means, while we're marching and rallying to decrease the cost of our car insurance and the cost of everything else, if we looked at energy holistically, this is really the thing that we have to grapple with and we have to settle. And the other thing is that the cost of energy is actually there is no situation under which we expect the cost of energy to decrease, especially when you look at the level of infrastructure that has to be replaced. But one great reason for families, Black families and people of color to pay attention to it is the opportunity for job growth, because we have to transform the entire energy industry, because we have to replace the infrastructure, because we have to address climate change, because we have so many things to do, replacing the current infrastructure, not with what we've always done, but with new infrastructures that provide sustainable solutions. The opportunities for job growth, workforce development growth, and business opportunity for Black and Brown families is unprecedented. So it is so important that we invite people, that we invite diversity, that we invite every community in this country to help with the transformation that needs to take place. One of the things we saw last summer, is that movements are more effective with diverse groups involved. The more people who are really at the helm, the more people who are weighing in on policy, the more people who are adding their perspective, it allows us to expedite movements. And there is no movement that needs to be expedited more urgently right now than sustainability and addressing climate change because we're really living through the nightmare, just the beginning of the nightmare that occurs if we don't address it.
And I think that was fantastic. Can I add something, Jeff?
Please.
In addition to the jobs, I also think there's health implications too. Living next to a coal plant or refinery, versus a solar plant. I mean, just imagine the benefits from a health point of view in those communities that are largely impacted by the poor conditions of coal fire plants, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Derek and Carla. Doug, what's your take on it?
I think Carla and Derek said it quite well. As we've looked at these issues from our perspective, we know that less energy translates into less carbon emissions and has those environmental benefits that Derek just mentioned. It has the monetary savings benefits that Carla mentioned earlier. It's certainly good for communities around infrastructure that creates those emissions. It's really good for all communities, of course, and we want to encourage that. With our products and the way they're designed and used and handled at the end of life, like I mentioned. But to Carla's point a moment ago about the other sources of energy use in the home, whether it's heating or cooling or kitchen appliances or laundry appliances, that all adds up. And technology and networks can enable better management. Tracking of that, as Carla mentioned, in real time is quite important for decision making. If you get your bill the next month, you can hardly remember what might have caused that spike last month. But if you're able to track and monitor this, using one of these devices that we all have, it adds a lot of power, literally enabling you to make these decisions that save energy and save you money in the end. So we like that story in our industry. We want to meet those technology needs out there in the community, but obviously be more sustainable in the process.
Excellent. Sam, would love your take on this, particularly as a global company. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, to be honest, I think you guys really picked it up absolutely perfect. I think the only thing I would add, Jeff, is obviously looking at it not only from a perspective of people of color, but actually just underprivileged communities as a whole. I think the impact, if we start with that, the impact of not going green, as we have seen, certainly in the last few months, is just massive. And unfortunately, those who are mainly and most impacted by is the communities, underprivileged communities across the world, in fact. And that is whether it's raising water levels, whether it's pollution, etc. So I think this is certainly an aspect that we really need to make sure that we help with our technology and of our services to somehow manage that. But the other piece of it, which is quite amazing to see, is that we see the green energy field is accelerating massively at the moment. But unfortunately, the participation in bringing that green energy and that technology to the world, there is a underrepresentation from the communities, underprivileged communities, to actually bring that technology. And I think this is the other piece that is extremely important when we're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, that we do make sure that participation from the underprivileged communities is there when we are talking about developing these technologies as well.
Great point. Yeah, that participation is huge. I think you all made a very good case for that. Thank you, Sam. All right, let's talk a little bit about an area that may be very important for many of us in terms of our individuals within our companies. Earlier, Lakeisha was mentioning all of the different locations across, well, really the world, certainly the country, where we had participants in our audience today. And those participants have many different roles within their organizations. They're in areas such as operations, technology, customer care, human resources, marketing, et cetera. What can we do as individuals to help our companies operate in a greener fashion? And Doug, why don't we start with you this time?
Sure, thanks, Jeff. Well, I like this question. And it was said a couple of different ways already in this panel, but ideas can come from any direction, and insights from one area of your business can benefit another. You, of course, want to make sure your organization fosters that sort of idea sharing and cross-departmental collaboration. But as professionals in the broader industry, contributing our own ways through our own departments to the greater good of the company and beyond, I think we do all have a role to play as individuals. Hopefully there's an opportunity to collaborate and come up with new ideas, maybe that are outside your realm that pertain to environmental sustainability for the company or its business. When it comes to energy efficiency, there are multiple angles. There's product design, there are operations, there's PR and communications, simply telling the outside world what you're doing, whether that's consumers or environmental groups or policymakers. But you may be doing quite a lot, but you also have to communicate that effectively to outside audiences. And so there are teams within companies, and certainly teams within my organization, that contribute to the work that we do on environmental sustainability. As I've led energy efficiency, I routinely turn to my colleagues who are in other roles, whether that's in PR and communications, market research. We do a lot of market research and consumer research studies, and we often need that sort of read on the market. So I'll turn to them frequently. We also produce, as an organization, industry standards. And there's some industry standards that pertain directly to measuring power consumption in our industry's products. And so I'll collaborate a lot with my colleagues in that part of our organization. And member relations. We're an organization of a couple of thousand member companies, all the big tech names that you're familiar with, but about 80% of our members are small and medium-sized companies. And they bring a diversity of perspectives to the table as well. And that point was made earlier too. You want to get a diversity of input and people and ideas to bring to bear on this ongoing challenge of environmental sustainability. It's not insurmountable. It takes a team effort within an organization and across the economy.
Excellent, thank you. Sam, why don't we come to you next?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting, when you look at, in general, how we address the topic. Just to maybe I'll give you an example of actually just recently, 2 weeks ago, I get a question. As you probably will know, in our organization, there are so many different departments with different roles and responsibilities. And we are busy with, quite busy actually, with not only the environmental aspect, but also the social aspect of our business, as we want to scale the benefits of our services, but also as a business beyond just our businesses and beyond internally beyond our company. And I get a question from one of our colleagues who, naturally, would be very difficult to see what you can do for sustainability. And the funny thing was, it took me literally 5 seconds to make 5 pretty important lines, so just bullet points, and send it back. And that colleague came back to me immediately, say, "Wow, I actually never thought of this, because I didn't know that I could actually be participating in helping you to develop and scale a sustainability agenda." So I think the point is, yes, there is a lot we can do, whether you are a legal department, whether you are a marketing department. I think Doug mentioned certainly some very interesting, parts of our businesses, but there is nothing in our business, in any department, that could not participate in scaling, but also advocating and bringing the sustainability agenda much further than we probably even think. And that comes all by making sure there's information out there, that you are available to help and guide. Again, I come back to the point that our employees are really, really vested in this. And a lot of our consumers and customers are as well. So as long as we make sure there is enough communication, but also a lot of transparency what we have, and it's transparency in the sense, not only what we're doing great, but also where we believe we are lacking performance. And there are areas where we are probably not sure what we can get to. I think it's an important, really important topic to also bring back to the table, because you can get a lot with cooperation and communication.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Derek, how about you?
Yeah, Sam, you teed it up quite well, and I'd like to build on that. I would say 2 things. Push beyond the no. And what do I mean by that is you're going to be, we're all champions of the green energy idea and sustainability concepts. Well, people are very busy. People are looking at a number of different avenues to dedicate their time, their resources, their efforts, right? So it could be financial effort, it could be, people effort. So I'd say, be persistent and push beyond that. Well, why are we doing this? Why is this important? And be enthusiastic and passionate about that topic, because passion is very contagious and can help move mountains. So keep leveraging the best practices, leveraging the standards, promoting the triple bottom line that I think was inferred by your great opening video that you aired. It's good for the company, good for the environment, and good for the bottom line, good for the people. So I'd say I'd go as far as being that champion, continuing the passion, and then push beyond that initial, you may get that initial wall that says, hey, you should be looking at something else, or why are you even doing this? So be persistent, keep beating the drum, and they'll catch on.
Thank you. Carla, how about bringing us home on this one?
Oh, yeah, just to push past what Sam and Derek said, leaders, your leaders, lead, just lead, have the courage to lead. We talk about renewable resources. I like to quote myself, and one of my favorite quotes is courage is a renewable resource, and courage is largely lacking in this fight. We are so accustomed to focusing on the bottom line, on profit. People are caring less and less about profit as their basements are flooding and they're burning up in the summers, and they're trying to figure out climate change. So I'm a CEO of a company, and I set the agenda for my company, and I build the buy-in from within. And that's what every single CEO should be doing, empowering everyone in that company to lead on this issue. And it's kind of frustrating to me that we're not much more vocal, much more aggressive, because one of the things I've learned in almost 40 years in business period is that large companies set the agendas, not just for their companies, but for cities. It is amazing to me the extent to which large companies have these lobbying arms. They have influence in every walk on policy, on how cities decide to spend their money, their resources, and their time. And we should be using that same influence to address the most important issue of the day, which is climate change.
Courage is a renewable resource. I'll probably quote you as well, Carla. Thank you for that. I think you all made a great point that when we started off the question, we were talking about individual departments, but this is more than an individual department or individual role. This is a collective, and all of us have some role to play. Thank you so much for that. Doug, we're going to come to you now for a specific question. I will say that it's not lost on us at Cox, and I'm sure it's true for all of our industry, that while we look at our energy consumption and what we do to power our networks and to certainly to manage our business internally, there's a lot of equipment that we're putting into homes and technology that we're driving out there for folks to have access to the products that we offer that also do consume energy. And now you've been a critical ally to our industry as we've worked together with the consumer electronics industry to improve energy efficiency in home devices, and certainly within our own infrastructure. Can you tell us more about the collaboration between our industries and various agreements that have grown from it?
Sure, absolutely. And pick up on Carla's point about leadership, and as much as it's important for us to lead in our professional ways on these topics, as the broader industry, we also have to lead when it comes to moving our industry in the right direction, and sometimes coming up with creative solutions to these public policy challenges and national and international goals that we have before us on the environment. One of the best initiatives that I've worked on in my career at this industry has been these industry-led energy efficiency voluntary agreements that you alluded to, and the partnerships that make them possible. In a nutshell, these voluntary agreements are industry's self-organized ways of coming together as competitors for a common purpose, in this case, to save energy on a certain timeline and by meeting certain requirements. And we've done that for set-top boxes starting in 2012 and through iterations and renewals of this agreement. And as of the end of 2019, and we'll have another annual report out just next month, but our 2019 annual report indicated that we've saved over $7 billion in energy costs and and avoided 39 million metric tons of carbon emissions. So really big numbers from something that we've done in the environmental sphere at the industry level, in partnership with the service providers, including Cox and others, in partnership with CableLabs and NCTA. And I think importantly, also in partnership with energy efficiency advocates who played a role with us. So this is, in the case of set-top boxes, a total private sector solution to a public policy challenge. It's been a great initiative. It's won awards, actually, not only the set-top box voluntary agreement, but the voluntary agreement for energy efficiency and small network equipment that we launched the following year. So that one's already about 8 years old. But that collaboration has been key. The critical ingredient to making such non-regulatory solutions work is a willing industry. Competitors in a given sector coming together, saying, hey, we want to do something and make a difference. And the involvement of non-industry players, in this case with set-top boxes, the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, ACEEE, and the National Resources Defense Council, NRDC, have been instrumental as non-industry players and partners at the table in managing these agreements and ensuring their rigor, their transparency, their credibility. So it's been a real pleasure, really, to work with service providers and many others to accomplish this savings with these voluntary agreements.
Outstanding. Thank you, Doug. And that's a great segue to Carla, our next question. You've been a participant in a discussion to the NRDC, the National Resources Defense Council, which is one of the world's largest and leading environmental advocates. And so NRDC was one of the organizations that first sounded that alarm about the amount of energy that's being used for cable devices such as the set-top boxes in the homes of our customers. And so what is your take on how our industry has responded to the challenge, and what more should we be doing?
So I have been a participant, and I think the entire country has been a beneficiary of the research that NRDC did. When I first became even aware of this issue, the first thing I found online was a research paper that was done in about 2005 that talked about the fact that the set-top boxes that were in use at that time, 2 to 3 of them used about the same amount of energy as a refrigerator in a home, which is a stunning way to make the energy consumption real and relevant to regular people, because everyone knows that your refrigerator is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and has a compressor. So it's using a lot of energy. And so just the attempt to make it real by the NRDC is really important. A lot of progress has been made, as Doug referenced, and it looks, just from some research I've done recently, it looks like the set-top boxes are using between 30 and 50% less energy than the ones in the 90s, which is absolutely huge. One of the things I would like to see done is those are newly manufactured set-top boxes for people that are ordering new set-top boxes. One of the things that's true about the cable industry is that older people have cable. If you talk to my kids, they're streaming. They're ridiculing me every day because I still have 4 cable boxes and they have a stick, or they have a streaming service, and they have all this stuff that I don't have. But what that means is that we still have 5 cable boxes, and our cable boxes aren't necessarily the new ones. If I went to my sister's house, I guarantee you that the 5 cable boxes in her home are all more than 5 years old. So what are we going to do to retire those boxes that are still using an enormous amount of energy and are still representing a burden, an economic burden to people who are now empty nesters and just have not even become aware of the issue that they're paying a bunch of money every month for something that is not serving them the best. So again, I keep harping on relevancy. My pocketbook is relevant, whether I believe in climate change, whether I feel like I am empowered to address climate change, I am empowered to address the energy burden in my home. So what are we going to do to get this message out to people who are not the early adopters, but who really do need to have this information?
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Carla. Now we're running a little tight on time, so I'd like to go ahead and shift to one final question for the entire panel. We'll start with you, Derek, on this one. If you put those binoculars to your eyes and look way out there on the horizon, 10 years down the road or so, where as an industry do you think we should be improving our energy efficiency to help us achieve those goals?
Well, I really think, and this, don't chastise me for this, but I think we need to continue our all-in approach. To pinpoint a single point in, SCTE's domain from the energy point of view and the Energy 2020 program has been the side of the subscriber's premise all the way back to where the signal generates. And from, what we've done in our research, it really needs to continue to be an all in. But if you're going to put me on the spot and say, where are we going to look at? Let's look at that access network and the changing technologies in the access network, because our initial research demonstrated and showed that access network was one of the largest consumers of power within the cable footprint. And I know there's a lot of technologies coming down the road that's going to impact in a positive way the access network consumed. So with that, I'll turn things back to you. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you. Sam, we'll come to you next.
Thanks, Jeff. So I think, again, Derek really put a really important, comment around how we could and where we would be in 10 years. But I would say even let's take another step, and that is, I think, first of all, the green energy movement has been active for many years. They have set the foundation, and we've been part of setting that foundation. I think that's a really important note to make, and not least, that is through the Energy 2020 program, which is industry-wide, as Derek has mentioned quite a few times. But I think the other aspect that we need to start also looking at is how do we make sure not that we adopt that as well, what we obviously have set foundation for, but also how do we look at this technically? And I think technically, we need to make sure there is an understanding energy is not the enemy, it's the emissions that are the enemy. So therefore, we need to define what is renewable energy, what is green energy, and what is gray energy, and how do we make sure that we adopt the best source of energy that we can, whether we generate it ourselves, if we have the ability to, whether we source it somewhere else, if we cannot generate it ourselves. I think that's step number one. And I think step number two, which we are absolutely really doing already very well, is making sure that we save energy. And that is the continuous effort to save energy, because then we don't have to even generate it, and therefore potentially generate waste. So that's the responsibility part where and I think looking at how we have set the foundation, we are really not very far in saying that we actually can be at the cutting edge of both the technology, and I think Doug mentioned that earlier, our technology is an enabler. And obviously with the new renewables technologies coming from a energy sourcing perspective and energy development perspective, we could be a great partner in this, because our technology, which is connectivity and entertainment, it's absolutely vital to make sure renewables is the future for everyone, not only for us.
Outstanding. Thank you. Now, Carla, what would you say for that next 10 years down the road?
I'm saying that the technology is going to change, and technology is going to drive change, but Black people, people of color, low to moderate income people are not even involved in these discussions. I want to make sure that we are not creating a new energy divide. Right now, we're fighting to solve the digital divide that we saw coming. We saw it coming 25 years ago, and now we're trying to figure out how to give poor people access to all the things that technology provides. My concern is that the early adopters, the smartest people, the richest people are going to adopt everything that this technology provides, and we're still going to leave underrepresented people, marginalized communities out. And 10 years from now, we're going to be trying to solve the energy divide the same way we're trying to solve the digital divide. So make this more inclusive, make sure the right people, all people, are represented at the policy table and thinking about how not to create a problem so that we're not trying to fix it 10 years from now.
Excellent point. Great analogy there too. Thank you, Carla. Doug, we're going to give you the final word on this one.
Well, 10 years is a long time in the consumer technology sector. We may not have set-top boxes at some point in the next decade, which is just fine. It's not that we won't have the services that they enable, but in terms of reducing physical boxes and additional plug loads, that's something to be appreciated. We'll always have networks, and networks are crucial. And getting technology in the hands of consumers up and down the socioeconomic spectrum is really important to helping them, well, certainly connect to the world, find new opportunities, which may be job opportunities. And like I said earlier, give them the means to manage their energy use in the home, or find out ways that they can save money and energy at the same time. I expect over the next decade, we'll also apply the voluntary agreement approach to one or two additional categories, which is great. We've also, over the past 15 years, done a census of energy use in our industry, produced an energy use study about every 3 years. We've done, our 5th one is coming up. I certainly hope we can do a couple of more of those over the next decade. And tracking that progress helps us then communicate to other stakeholders, hey, here's where we are, here's what we're doing, here's where we've been, and here's where we're going.
Outstanding. Thank you. And I would like to thank all of our panelists today for your insights, your feedback, and the great answers you provided for us today. If we were in a room together, there'd be a standing ovation, I'm sure, but we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share your perspectives on this. It's now my pleasure to hand off to my colleague and good friend, Vanya Aline, for a few closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff and panelists. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Such a dynamic conversation. So thank you all very much. I have the privilege of closing out this terrific session. And so I want to thank again, Jeff, as a moderator, and the phenomenally informative panelists. I'd like to thank our members and attendees for joining us this afternoon. I hope you walked away with just filled your cup overflowing with the information that was bestowed upon us. Would like to ask that you follow us on social media for more information. NAMIC-Virginia, SCTE, and NCTA. This is one of many events that we plan on continuing our partnership with in the future. So stay on the lookout for information about future events. And again, look for us on social media. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Wishing you all a very happy and safe remainder of your day. Thank you very much for attending. Bye-bye.